So tell me where you grew up. What do you call home? And we'll start there and move on through it.
Okay, I was born in Lynchburg.
Okay.
Graduated from EC Glass in 65. Got drafted into the Army in 66. So I tell people that was almost my senior trip.
Wow.
I was working for Otis Elevator in Roanoke.
Okay.
I was on the waiting list to start night school for electronics in March. In the meantime, I had applied and been accepted to go to Danville Technical Institute for machine shop. That started in March, and Uncle Sam got me in February.
Wow.
And I got drafted before the lottery ever started.
Oh, wow.
I was 19 when I went over to Vietnam. Everybody I would run into was mostly from 69 to 72. They found out I was 66, 67. They called me the old man, but yet they were older than me. I was over there most of the time. If you think about it, was you went over as a unit.
Yeah.
After my basic training, I was in Fort Holabird, Maryland, intelligence school. I got orders halfway through my class to go to Vietnam. And I go down to the headquarters, and the captain said, "Stokes, you got orders, you're going to Vietnam." I said, "Sir, I'm only halfway through my class. Soldier, your orders are cut. You are going, you better pass." So I went over by myself. I was an individual. And at the time I got orders to go, there was a nationwide airline strike. Friend of a family worked at Andrews. I went up and spent the night with him. He got me connections to finally get to California. I'd never been past Tennessee. I get there a day early. So I check into the Army terminal. I want to go see what California's like. The guards locked the gate because too many people were going AWOL. So the day I'm supposed to arrive in California, my orders were Class A, supposed to fly commercial, land in Saigon. I'm in my Class A's with the first air cav on a maiden flight of a C-141. We made 3 emergency landings on the way to Vietnam.
God.
The last one was in Guam. They had the runway foamed up and all of the apparatus out, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm going to get killed before I ever get to Vietnam.
Holy cow.
Instead of landing in Saigon, I landed up country in Pleiku. And Vietnam has 2 seasons, hot and dry and hot and wet. As soon as we got secured at a tent, I changed into my fatigues. That night after chow, they put us in a deuce and a half and took us down to the runway, which was metal planking, and we was in a little guard shack. And they had 3 flights coming in to take us down to Saigon. First 2 flights came and went fine. Third flight, as it started to come in, we came under a mortar attack. And we're standing there. No one had a weapon. We're standing there. You could see the blast go off, and you could see silhouettes of the, I don't know if it was Viet Cong or the NVA coming over the hill. Well, our plane pulled up. They cut the engine to the inside, left the oven running. They dropped the ramp. We go to get on it. It was full of dead bodies. Blood was running down the ramp. And we had a big master sergeant, big black guy. And they're hollering, come on, we're taking fire. He said, we're not riding on no dead people. Come on, we're taking fire. He said, we're not riding on dead people. So they raised the ramp, the plane took off. Probably half an hour later, the attack's over with, so we're waiting on another plane to come in. He said, men, I want to tell y'all something. When your number's up and it's time for you to meet the maker and the good Lord has called for you, it's a done deal. He said, but you got all these thousands of bullets flying around that says to whom it's concerned. That's the ones you got to worry about. Don't take any unnecessary chances. He told me that August of '66, and it's as fresh in my mind as if he told me that last night.
Now, just to back up a little bit, we've had a few guests come on already, my dad being one of them, and I mentioned to you before that I learned as much about my dad's experience in Vietnam being at the show than I did living with him for 18 or 20 years before I went out on my own.
Right.
So I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that had been drafted. So how does that happen? Like, you didn't have any intention of going into the military. You get drafted and you told you're going to go. So did you go into like a boot camp before you went to LA? Or?
I took basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. I graduated from there. I went to Fort Holabird, Maryland for my AIT, or Advanced Individual Training. And then from there, straight to Vietnam.
So you had no choice whether it was Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines.
Well,
they just did.
It's funny you said that. I had already passed, you had to go to Roanoke at the induction station. I had already passed my physical. So my first detail, I'm sharpening pencils for the ones going up there to take the test. And I'm sitting on the front row, and a Marine sergeant walks in, and he says, "Man, the Marines are drafting. I want 5 volunteers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in number 6 chair." So he herded those 5 guys out.
Wow.
And the Army sergeant come in. He said, "Man, the Marines are drafting this month. If you don't want to go into the Marines, raise your hand." I stood up.
Wow.
So I tell people I came within an inch or one chair of being in a Marine.
Wow.
And then it was kind of ironic because I was military intelligence, and the DMZ, the Van Lien Zone, was my area of specialty. Mm-hmm. And I stayed with Marine interrogators 5 miles from the DMZ off and on for 2 weeks. So I came close to being a Marine.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
But so then you're over in the Army, and in the plane, when you finally get there, right. The plane goes, and then now do you have training? Are you ready to do, you said it was intelligence that you were part of? So are you gaining intelligence, a recon type thing?
Well, I was ready, but when we left Pleiku, we went to Saigon, another mortar attack. Mm. The next day, they took us down to Benoit, Long Binh 90th Replacement Battalion, another mortar attack. They lost my orders. Mm. So I got shipped to Cameron Bay for 2 months unloading ammunition off of ships. Finally, they get my orders. I go back to Long Binh, another mortar attack. Mm. And then I go into Saigon, that's where I was stationed. Our compound, we were 18 clicks south of Saigon. They bust us in every morning and brought us back. And sometimes it was 2 weeks before I saw a bed. We'd work 20 hours, and they let us sleep on top of a desk for 4 hours. Mm. And that's how it was. Anywhere in Vietnam was really not a secure area because it was in
war zone,
borderline, war zone.
In their country.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
And this is around 67?
66.
66? Yes. So you're really early in
yes.
the Vietnam. So intelligence, you're probably critical to that whole mission of trying to learn. Is that what your tasks
yes. are? We were originally, our headquarters was on Ton Son, the big sprawling air base. We were cramped in a little 2-story building, and one day the colonel walked out, and the Phantom jets were parked in hangars right beside our building. And the colonel walked out, and a landing strut almost hit him. After that, they built us a brand new facility that was air conditioned, right across from Third Field Hospital, right adjacent to the ARVN High Command. So we were safe on that part. And our center was Combined Intelligence Center Vietnam. We had Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and our Vietnamese counterparts. Well, as a courtesy, and most of the Vietnamese were either upper echelon enlisted or officers. So as a courtesy, the government gave their wives, got them to come in to do janitorial work. Well, when you entered the compound, you had a badge you had to show to get on to the facility. Then once you got inside the building, you turned that one in, and they gave you a picture badge that you had to wear at all times. Well, they found out when you went into the facility, the government had to hire the civilian police to fritz the women coming out because some of them were trying to steal classified papers to give to the VC, and their husbands were working alongside of us.
Wow.
Mm. So you couldn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Because one, we were round eyes. Vietnamese, you couldn't tell if they were friendly or not because they all looked alike.
That's
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you feel like you know what you're doing when you're there? Like you've been trained enough to be doing your job well?
Yes, my title was I was an area analyst, order of battle specialist, and I had a situation map, and everything on it was confidential. And I had this overlay that I updated daily, weekly, and monthly. It's called SPARs, Special Agent Reports. And I evaluated the agents, and they were operating under the auspices of the CIA.
Okay.
And I made contacts and good friends with the CIA. So anyway, they would send you say, for instance, Fred. I would get a report from Fred. I'd get his coordinates. I'd put it on the map. And over a period of time, you could see his operating area. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in there one day, and we gave briefings all the time. I called it the dog and pony show.
Yeah.
And we was in there one day, and colonels came by, and they said, "Soldier, what is that right there?" And I said, "That's special agent reports, sir." Okay. So gave them my briefing on it. They left. Captain Salmon came up, and he said, "Stokes, you got to change your map." I said, "For what?" "You got to change it from confidential to secret." I said, "Okay. Why?" "You're not supposed to be smart enough to figure out the SPARs and the agents." I said, "Okay." So I changed my map to secret. Well, I had to evaluate the agents. And going back, if I saw that Fred 6 weeks ago, same location, same information, he'd send it in to get paid. Well, I tell my friends over at the CIA, next thing you know, there's no more Fred. Mm. Well, don't ask, don't tell. I don't know if they got rid of it, if they killed
Fired him,
or what they did to him. But next thing you know, there's Joe. So, and then it's kind of strange because I was 19, turned 20. I took my job serious.
Yeah.
Because I had troops on the ground depending on good intel.
Yes.
And when I've gone to schools or been asked about it, first question the elementary kid will ask, "Did you kill anybody?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "That's a no and yes answer." And they get this bewildered look. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Okay, did I take the rifle, point it at the enemy, and pull the trigger?" The answer is no.
Right.
I said, "But because of naval bombardment, ground artillery, and the jets, I was responsible for probably tens of thousands of the NVA being killed." Mm-hmm. As you know, American casualties were a little over 58,000. It is estimated that between the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese, they lost 2.5 million.
Wow.
Lord.
And they would never admit that,
Sure.
but that's what we derived on casualty counts.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how long were you doing this particular thing?
I did that until 3 days prior to me rotating back home.
Okay.
I had not gotten a replacement. And they said, "Well, you can do you can extend for 30 days. You'll knock 60 days off of your enlistment." I told them 1 year is enough.
Yeah.
I'm getting out. "Well, we can slap an admin hold on you." Mm. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We can extend you for 30 days. If you haven't got a replacement, another 30 days. We can do that." Finally, I had 2 days left, and I had a replacement come in. Mm. And I grabbed him, and I hugged him. I felt bad because I did not have time to train him. I had to clear post from there, then had to go back to the compound to make my flight out. And it was funny because when I arrived in country at the replacement battalion, we were in tents. Mm-hmm. And when I got back 11 months, almost 12 months later, they had 2-story barracks like you had in basic training. Mm-hmm. The ones short timers that were going home, we were still in tents, but they were double walled with sandbags. Mm. And so the night that I finally got to go out, we're on 3 flights, and we go over to the airport, and the first 2 planes come and go. Our flight didn't come in. So they bust us back over another day to sweat it. Mm. The next night, you would think because we missed our flight, they would put us on the first flight.
Sure.
No, we're on the 3rd flight. First 2 flights come and go fine. We look up in the sky. We see the landing lights. Our hearts start pounding. This is it. Here's our freedom flight back home. Guess what? Plane touched the runway, mortar attack. He pulled up and he left skid marks with sparks flying all the way down the runway. So I told people, I arrived in Vietnam with a bang, and I left Vietnam with a bang.
Wow.
So I survived 5 mortar attacks, got shot at once on guard duty, but I had an angel looking over top of me because I did not get wounded, didn't have to, no thing. Came back safe and sound.
Now, here's a question we haven't discussed with anybody yet. When you're there, how do you communicate to anyone back at home? I mean, landlines aren't, I don't know if that's prevalent. So is it just letters? Is that
letters? And when you would send a letter, it might take a week for it to get from there to home and then from home and back. And that was the only way. Now, you could go down to the USO, and they had kind of like ham radios, but there's quite a bit of difference. When you're over there, you're a day ahead of back here in the States.
Yeah.
And so there was no use trying to do that. But one thing that was kind of strange, and I'll tell you about it, when they had me TDY in Cameron Bay unloading ammunition, I was there when the Korean White Horse Infantry Division landed. They did guard duty for the SAM missile sites up in the mountains. And the American, we never could understand, the VC, we called them Charlie. If you went by the American compound, you had these shipping connexes with slots cut in them, sandbagged inside and out, guard towers, floodlights, concertina wire, barbed wire, gates and everything. This was the American compound. You go by the Korean compound, that looked like an old hitching post. No nothing. There was a white line. There was a VC with ice tongs stuck in his head hanging over top of it. Charlie did not mess with the Koreans.
Wow.
The first mistake they did, they attacked the Koreans. They run into the village, hid the weapons. You couldn't tell if they were friendly or not. You know, the Americans, we got slammed by the news media with the My Lai massacre. Okay. The Koreans, when they went into a village, they killed every man, woman, and child and burned it to the ground. And they would not stop till they got a 3-to-1 kill ratio. Well, the United States government says it's no way possible. No way. They would cut the left ear off of the VC and put them on a piece of rawhide, and they would throw them down on the desk, and it looked like pork rinds. Finally, the Americans were convinced, okay, don't bring any more ears in here. We will take your word for it.
that was our tally.
After that, Charlie never messed with the Koreans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
So while you were there, what kind of, is it breakthroughs that you're getting? Because like you said, you're starting and you're trying to figure out who's friendly and who's not. And do you start building a rapport and you start getting some consistency?
Some consistent. One, you relied on intel from your other units. If we got in a report, I'll give you an example. I had a report of the Russian B-140 rocket on the Vinh Linh province, which was right across the Ben Hai River, and separating the two countries, north and south. As soon as I posted that, my lieutenant, Second Lieutenant Nash, if you ever watched Beetle Bailey, Lieutenant Fuzz, he was the poster boy for that. He had gone through NCO school. He was E5, then he went OCS. He was my second lieutenant. As soon as we got posted about the 140 rockets, he and I had to go down to the MACV headquarters, and we had to brief General Westmoreland. And the lowest ranking person there was probably a full bird colonel. I walked in that room and I've never seen as many stars, and I mean stars, 1, 2, 3, 4-star generals in there. And I'm holding the map, trying to point, and I'm scared to death, shaking like a leaf. And he's got his squeaky voice he's trying to say about the 140 rockets. It took 20 minutes to get from MACV headquarters back to our unit. When we got there, we had orders cut to go with the Marines into the DMZ on an interrogation mission. So I get my gear, we go up, we get a flight to Dong Ha, 3rd Marine Division headquarters, and we are staying with the Marine interrogators. Well, somewhere along the way, the Marines misplaced our orders. So they would not take responsibility of us going into the DMZ. Thank God for that. So anyway, we stayed with interrogators off and on for about a week. They brought in, they would not let us set in on the interrogators, even though they were in the hooch right behind us. But I'll give you, for instance, they brought in 5 NVA captured prisoners and 3 Marines. And the interrogators told us they worked on the Marines. The NVA, they had minor casualties. Anyway, one of the Marines died on the operating table. And this one North Vietnamese officer sat there with a cheesy grin. He said, okay, we patched them up, we fed them, we gave them cigarettes, we put them over into the compound. The next morning, they brought all 5 of them out, and he walked up to the lieutenant, and he said, talk. And he started giving him that cheesy grin. All right. You were the one that was laughing when that Marine died on the operating table. Now, I've not told many people this. He said, we took detonator cords, and we wrapped it around each one of their necks. I walked back up to that lieutenant. I pointed my finger at him, and I said, talk. And about the time he tried to grin, bam, his head went one way, his body went the other. He said, we had to take a baseball bat and beat the other 4 to shut him up.
Wow.
Now, had the news media got a hold of that, that would have been the end of it, because I told people, if you were in Vietnam and you were in a combat situation, every evening we were in your living room with Walter Cronkite.
Yes.
And if you were in a combat situation with a reporter and a newsman, you had to put yourself in harm's way to try to protect those two so they can tell you all of the negative stuff that took place. As you know now, good news doesn't sell. It's always the bad news, the negative news. The news media lost the war for us. Ho Chi Minh, everybody thought Ho Chi Minh was pulling the strings. He was a puppet figure. General Gap, he was head of a notorious 324B division, the most notorious division in North Vietnam. And he was the one calling the shots. And he realized that they don't have to do anything. The news media and the public back home is going to end it. Well, they were ready to declare a truce. And had the president continued with the bombing of Haiphong Harbor and Hanoi, it would have been a different outcome to the war. But because of the news media back in the United States, we lost the war. And as a matter of fact, Vietnam veterans, we never lost a battle. Congress and the public lost the war for us.
Wow.
No doubt. So how long, you were there for about a year?
Yes.
And then you come back. Are you done with your service at that point?
I came back. I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay, yeah.
The rest of my class from Fort Hollywood stayed at Fort Bragg the whole time complaining about the living conditions.
Oh, my Lord.
I told them, I said, look, you don't have a clue. And I've gone to schools, and I tell people, especially elementary kids, I said, when you were eating a meal at your house or your grandparents, did they ever give you any food that you really didn't like? You know, the kids shaking their heads. I said, I was the same way. My mama would tell me, you know, that kid's overseas starving that would love to have that. And I said, Mama, can't you mail it to them? He said, well, you can't do that. Well, they told you the truth, because when we stayed with the interrogators up at Dong Ha, there was 2 sergeants, and one of them, he kept wanting to go out on patrol and go on recon. And the other one says, no, you're too valuable. I can't risk you going out there. So the second week we were up there, we're sitting there, and at 5 o'clock, you had a choice. You could go to the mess tent and eat slop, or you could get a hot shower. The only time I got a hot shower in Vietnam was 5 miles from the DMZ with the Marines. So we would eat sea rations packed in 1945 or 46.
Oh, my God.
So anyway,
Wow.
he's bugging the sergeant. He said, why don't you get the trash together and take Stokes and go to the dump? His expression changed drastically. Come on. I said, the dump? He said, yeah. We put all of our unopened cans in one box, took the trash in the other. We got in the Jeep. We go down on a dirt road. If you've ever grown up on a farm and had pigs, you call it slop in the hog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They would take a deuce and a half and have 55-gallon drums, and it would go down to the end of this cul-de-sac, and they would turn around, and they would dump it out, and the truck was right in front of us. Well, we're going down the road, and this garbage dump, these heads start popping up. The Vietnamese are living in the garbage dump.
Wow.
They would take boxes and tin and whatever, and they had little holes dug out, and they would wait for the truck to go down there to dump the slop. And they're standing under it fighting for it. Well, the deuce and a half, they dropped their stuff, and they turned around and went back out. So we pulled up and turned around, and he handed me a baseball bat. And I said, what's the bat for? He said, hold on to it, you're going to need it. So he would take a can, and he would hold it up like this. And you've seen these apocalypse movies, the zombies? Mm-hmm. These people started coming at you, and they got this crazed look. And he would toss it up, and they would fight over it. He said, Stokes, when they get too close to you, start swinging. If you don't hit them, they're going to literally kill you.
Wow.
This food. And I couldn't believe it. Well, it was true. And we had people coming up, and I never will forget. There was this, I reckon she was an elderly woman. She had that crazed look and eyes like this, and she's grabbing at me like that. And he said, Stokes, hit her. If you don't, they're going to kill you. I hit her between the eyes. Her eyes rolled around. It never faced her.
Wow.
She kept coming at me.
Good grief.
And it was maybe 50 of them. And we at the time, we swung that bat until you could not swing it anymore. He jumped in the Jeep. We go back to the compound. We get back to the hooch, and I'm in shock. And the other sergeant laughed. He said, how was your experience at the dump? And I'm just shaking my head in disbelief. He said, I call that physical therapy. Said he'll be good for another month. That's how he got it out of his system.
Yeah.
But, you know, there they would have literally killed you for whatever they had there.
Wow.
Did you ever have any liberty? Did you ever get any time away from the Central Intelligence?
Once in a while, we would get an afternoon off, and we would go to Saigon. And they told us, when you go to Saigon, the national beer was Bombay Bar. They said, do not drink Bombay Bar. It's got formaldehyde in it. So we figured, hey, you're already pickled in the ball when you die. But you could go ball hopping, and you could get plastered. You could stop, get a Coke, sip on it. 20 minutes later, you're stone sober. You could start all over again.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Holy
then,
cow.
you know, you've heard the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the street vendors, they had these little carts. I call them the Howard Johnsons. You could get a bowl of steamed rice and a raw fish head. Well, I'd get the rice. I'd give the fish head to the kids. I'm not going to eat raw fish head. But a lot of times we'd be in a bar, and some of the bar girls would go out and they'd bring something in. And I said, what is that? No. Okay, so I'd give them the equivalent of 20 cents worth, called 20 P's. That girl can bring something in. I think one time, it was monkey nuts. I'm not sure. I think that's what she tried to thing. Other times, they had something. It was in a clear broth. It had some weeds and onions, and it looked like a piece of white bologna. And it's about the thickness of a piece of white bologna. Well, you know, I'm plastered. I'm eating. I don't know what it was. I think she told me it was raw fish gut. I don't know.
Oh my goodness!
Gosh.
Hey, try anything.
When in Rome, do as the Romans.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So when you get back home, you're at Fort Bragg. How long are you there before you're out?
I got back. I had 14 days liberty at home. And when I went to Fort Bragg, I had not quite 6 months. The problem I had was before I left Vietnam, I had paper after paper after paper. I could not disclose what I did because of my clearance.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even tell my parents that.
Yeah.
So when you came home, I know my first weekend back, there was a roadhouse right across from the airport called Dickie's Place. So my first weekend back, I go there, and people came up to me and grabbed me and hugged me. Where have you been? We haven't seen you forever. Well, I just got back from Vietnam. Whoa.
No kidding.
They spaced out like you were contagious. Nobody wanted to hear about it. So I had a double whammy. One, I couldn't tell the family what I did. When I did get out of the service, you did one of two things. You took your uniform off, you either threw it in the back of the closet, or you threw it away. And that's the way it was. Nobody wanted to hear about Vietnam. Now, they realize that we did make a go at it. Matter of fact, a couple of years ago, we got invited to go to, with the Exchange Club, go up to D.C. to the wall. And while there, I was standing looking at the wall, and a Vietnamese came up to me. And he said, "Were you in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "When?" I said, "August 66 to August 67. He said, "So was I." I said, "Oh." He said, "But I was on the other side." He was a North Vietnamese.
Wow.
So we reached out and shook hands.
No kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, it was kind of strange. Here you are, two people against each other,
Yeah.
and we're there at the wall in D.C., and we shook hands. And so I said, you know, that's pretty cool. But anyway,
Yeah.
we finished up there. We got a FBI escort going, you know, have traffic bad in 95. We were running 85 going down 95, and we went to Quantico, and the general stayed over waiting for us to get there. And he said, "Men, I want to tell y'all something. Y'all's efforts in Vietnam was not in vain. Y'all were the first generation of soldiers to go up against guerrilla warfare."
Absolutely.
Yes,
And
sir.
he
Yeah.
said, y'all's legacy is making a difference, because what y'all went through and what y'all experienced, it's being taught in all of the military installations now. So he said, you can hold your head up high and be proud of it. That is y'all's legacy.
Wow.
As well as the wall is our legacy.
Yeah. Now, your description about people just vamoosing when you told them you were in Vietnam, you know, reading your bio, and I appreciate for you answering the questions that you have and that kind of thing. But I noticed you were very involved with Vietnam veteran efforts in the community and that type of thing. Is that why you're so active in that?
Well, not only Vietnam veterans, but all of the veterans organizations, except the Marine Corps League and Purple Heart. I didn't qualify for Purple Heart, thank goodness for that. I'm a member of all of the organizations there. Plus, going to the VA in Salem, if I sign in and I'm the only one representing, I report back to each of the organizations what's going on, what's coming down, and so forth. So yeah, you would say I'm a veterans advocate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. And it was so needed. I mean, there was a time where it was a gap, but it seems like it's rebuilt. The patriotism, the people that respect, like Brian and I, I mean, what you did in Vietnam is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It seems like it built back up, but it's a lot of it's from your all's efforts
Yeah.
through these organizations.
Exactly. There's one thing, one major difference. When we were at the Vietnam Veterans Wall, young kids were coming up and they were shaking your hand and thanking you for the service. And when we left there, we went over to Arlington. And Steve and I had the honor of placing a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Well, we had a World War II veteran on our bus, and everybody else on the bus was one World War II, one Korean, and the rest Vietnam veterans. We were going down the sidewalk toward the main gate at Arlington. These teenagers coming up. You either stopped and stood still, or you stepped out into the street. They'd walk right by you. No respect. The World War II veteran, he walked with a cane. He said, if they knock me down, I'm going to hit them. I said, well, you might as well get ready because they're going to ignore you. And the same is true here in Lynchburg. Now, Lynchburg is very veteran friendly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm proud to say that. But there's still one group of people from Lynchburg that will ignore Vietnam veterans. And that's my age group.
Yeah.
The ones that graduated in 65, I don't know if they still hold a grudge against it or what it is, but they will not come to terms.
You know, you say that, and I know it's getting out of what your purview is, but we discuss this a lot. It's the same people that still protest everything. You know, they just are not patriots. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about protest.
Yeah.
I'm on the Virginia State Council, and I'm also Sergeant at Arms for Virginia State Council and publicity chairman. I got an invitation from the Army. They wanted first come, first serve, 25 Vietnam veterans to be up on the stage on the 14th for the giant parade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't go for three reasons. One, you had to be at the Pentagon early that morning. They was bus you down to be on the parade podium to watch the parade. Second reason I didn't want to go, well, first reason was the traffic. Second reason, I understand there's going to be multiple protests everywhere. I didn't want to get involved in the protest. And when I got the National DAR Veteran of the Year Award in D.C. in 2019, it was $80 then to park your car in the hotel parking lot. So if I'd have gone up, I'd have had to spend the night. Hotels are not cheap in D.C.
Oh, yeah.
And I can imagine what the parking would be now. So I declined to go. We've got state council coming up the end of this month, and I'm curious to find out how many took the government offer up on it to be on the platform.
That's interesting. You're listening to Life, Liberty, Happiness. We're talking to Sergeant Specialist David Stokes. Before we let you go, because we think you've spending the time with us today, we always end our segment with a question of if you could, doesn't matter, any time in history, any individual, dead or alive, who would you pick to spend a whole day with, and where would you spend with them?
Wow. Only one person?
Yeah.
Yep, you get one.
Only one. Well, I'm a charter member of the Sons of the American Revolution. So I reckon I would like to spend a day with some of my ancestors that fought in the American Revolution. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's comparing then plus now.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
to
amazing.
see how things have changed.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
would be very interesting conversation. Yeah. Well, appreciate you taking your time out of your day to spend with us. We love doing this segment, and we learned so much. I know I speak for Emma and Trent, but it's thank you again for your service. We support all veterans, and thanks for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me here.